Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at EKS Cloud. When I say EKS Cloud, I just mean EKS, the default offering, as opposed to EKS Anywhere or the other variants. But anyway, so EKS stands for Elastic Kubernetes Service. It is a managed service that eliminates the need to install, operate, and maintain your own Kubernetes control plane on AWS. I don't say it here in the slide, but I just want you to know that the control plane is an expensive cost. So when you spin this thing up, I think last time was like $100 a month or something. It was very expensive for the base level for the control plane. Doesn't matter what provider you use out there, whether it's AWS, Azure, or GCP, you're always paying the cost for the control plane and then the additional cost of the stuff. That's why it can be great to use ECS if you have a simpler use case, because that control plane is AWS's managed service and they're not charging you for that management layer. But with EKS, you have to deploy a control plane. It's fully managed, but the point is you're still paying for that compute. If you want to connect to your Kubernetes clusters, you're going to use kubectl. This is something you'd be very familiar with if you took my other course, the KCNA. I'm not going to explain what Kubernetes is here. That's what my other course is for and goes into the details of its operation. We just need to understand this managed service. So anyway, kubectl is how we would establish connection to our cluster to perform deployments or any kind of operations we want to do. You can do some things in AWS Management Console. They're not as robust as other providers. So like if you're coming from Google, like GKE, you could do a lot in the console, whereas in this, you can barely do anything. If you want to establish an inbound connection, so let's say you're hosting a web app and you want to get that traffic to your nodes, the apps running in your pods, you would need to deploy the AWS ALB ingress controller, which will in turn deploy an ALB, which is how you will get ingress traffic into your cluster. I'm just going to tell you, this thing is a big pain to set up. I would have done a lab 4 or 5 times over just to get this right. But once you get past this hurdle, everything else is actually really good. So I wish AWS made this one component a lot easier to deploy, but it's still not easier. EKS can use different types of compute nodes. So we have EC2 instances. This is where we have some options. So we have the managed node groups where the autoscaling is fully managed by AWS. You can have self-managed node groups where you can manage the scaling yourself with EC2 autoscaling groups, or you can use Carpenter, which is the cloud-native open-source autoscaler. You have Fargate instances, so I believe the scaling is managed by Fargate here, and you have external instances that you can connect, so you can do that as well. There are differences between using EC2 instances and Fargate. I don't really get into that here, but I just know there is limitations in what you can do. So just understand the experience is very different between EC2 instances and Fargate. I find it easier to use EC2 instances with EKS because they're just more flexible, but it's up to what you want to do. There are add-ons that you can work with EKS. So we're not going to read all of them here, but the main ones that you should know, the top one is that, it says AWS VPC CNI plugin for Kubernetes, so enable pod networking within your cluster. I wanted to say the ingress controller. I guess it's not even in the list here. Do I see it here? No, but we listed it here, or I listed it here, the AWS ALB ingress controller, but that is a very important component. So I guess it's something you deploy, so it's not necessarily an add-on, so I guess that makes sense. But anyway, the things that are important is the Amazon VPC CNI plugin for Kubernetes, so your cluster can work with VPCs, Core DNS, kubeproxy, the EKS pod identity agent. And then there's a bunch of other stuff down below, like mounting S3 and things like that. There are a bunch of third-party add-ons, so if you're familiar with any of these services like Datadog or Solo or whatever, those can plug into them too. There is something called Amazon EKS Connector, so if you wanted to connect your own Kubernetes cluster that is conformant with what AWS expects, you can then manage your cluster within the AWS Management Console under Kubernetes. And the way you do that is you use Helm to install this open source piece of software that would connect your cluster, your local cluster to AWS. There's more to it than that, but I just want you to know that you can do that. Then there's EKS-CTL. So this is a CLI tool. I think it was made by Weaveworks, which I don't think Weaveworks exists anymore, but it is the easiest way to deploy your cluster. Usually when I do the labs, I'll do it manually so you can see all the steps so you're not missing anything. But generally, you want to use this because it just is super easy to use. But anyway, so EKS can deploy EC2 back nodes, Fargate nodes to private clusters on AWS Outpost. You create your cluster by doing create cluster. And if you did that, there are some defaults it has built in here. So it would generate a name. It would use M5 large worker nodes. It configured to use the EKS AMI. It would deploy in US West region 2, though I assume whatever it was region you have, it would probably change it into a dedicated VPC. You can override all that stuff by providing a configuration file, and then you can get something more of what you want. And that's what you really should do, as I probably would not use the default. But that is Kubernetes in a nutshell. There's a lot to the service, but again, we could waste a lot of time. We could make a whole course, an entire course just on EKS, but let's keep it to the bare minimum here, okay?